Bryan Kohberger's shocking guilty plea just weeks before his death penalty trial has left the victims' families divided and demanding answers about why prosecutors accepted a deal that spares the Idaho student killer from execution. But what does his courtroom demeanor reveal about his true state of mind during his pivotal moment that forever changed the trajectory of one of America's most closely watched murder cases? And what are the implications of this guilty plea? Well, some background first. Bryan Kohberger was charged with the murders of 4 University of Idaho students who were fatally stabbed in their off-campus residence in November 2022. The case attracted significant public attention due to the brutal nature of the crimes and the lengthy investigation that preceded Kohberger's arrest. Initially, he maintained his innocence for over 2 years, with a not guilty plea entered on his behalf during pretrial proceedings. The case was scheduled to go to trial in August 2025, with prosecutors seeking the death penalty if he was convicted. However, just weeks before the trial was set to begin, Kohberger agreed to plead guilty to all charges as part of a plea deal that would spare him from execution. And when asked by the judge if he was pleading guilty because he was actually guilty, Kohberger responded yes to each charge. The plea agreement includes 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for the murderers. And as part of the deal, Kohberger also waived his right to appeal. So this is pretty much definitive. Now, the plea deal has created significant controversy among the victims' families, with harsh reactions from the Gonsalves and Coronado families who expressed feeling blindsided by the sudden nature of this plea agreement. They claim that prosecutors did not adequately consult them or give them sufficient time to process the possibility of a plea deal, describing the process as shocking and cruel. The family's anger centers on several key issues. The first one is some of them are strongly supported the death penalty and believe that life imprisonment is insufficient justice for the murderers. They view the plea as an easy way out that spares Kohberger the ultimate punishment that they felt was warranted. And second, by accepting the plea deal, Kohberger avoided a public trial, meaning that evidence, details about his motives, and the full story of what happened may never be revealed publicly. And you can imagine that this has left families frustrated, that there are questions about why their loved ones were targeted and what exactly occurred may remain unanswered. If Kohberger had not accepted the plea deal, the case would have proceeded to trial as originally scheduled in August 2025. A trial would have involved the presentation of all evidence in open court, including forensic details, witness testimony, and potentially more information about motive and the sequence of events. We would have had the opportunity to hear the full case and see a jury determine guilt or innocent. If convicted at trial, Kohberger could have been sentenced to death, as the judge had ruled the death penalty was on the table. I think some people are confused because of this. The proceedings up to this point have been pre-trial hearings rather than an actual trial. Pre-trial hearings are used to determine if there is enough evidence for a case to go to trial, and decide which evidence will be allowed, address legal motions, and negotiate plea deals, and settle procedural issues. Many of these hearings were closed for many reasons, such as protect sensitive information, ensure fair trial rights, and allow confidential legal discussions between prosecution and defense. This contrasts with an actual trial, which would have been open to the public and media, with the court planning to stream proceedings online and manage attendance through a ticketing system. So, the plea deal effectively ends the case without the public disclosure of all the details, leaving some families feeling that justice was not fully served and that important questions about the crime will forever remain unanswered. But before we begin, remember to hit the like and subscribe button and download my free 100 body language tips in the description of this video. Let's get down to it. The first clip we're going to analyze is the very first part of the plea hearing, in which the judge is apologizing for such a short notice. He says that he believed this was going to trial by all measures and the plea deal basically caught him off guard. As usual, this first watch is useful to compare his body language to the rest of the hearing. Watch.
I, like most everyone else, learned of this plea agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand.
We only need a very short clip to check a couple things. Kohberger is not going to move much during the full trial, but his posture is going to change in very subtle ways as the plea moves on. My best recommendation for analysis of events where there's very nuanced body language involved is to force yourself to take a look at the negative space of the image. And this is done in two steps. The first step is to imagine a line around all the perimeter of the subject, just like if you wanted to make a sticker for your favorite messaging app. The sad thing is that I must mention is that I'm sure that there are crazy people out there that would actually want to create a sticker out of him pleading guilty. But besides that disturbing fact, let's focus on the analysis for now. The second part of observing the negative space is to do this in your mind. Imagine the subject as a single blob of white over a plain black background. This is done to isolate the shape and see it for what it is, as in a blob of or shape in itself. This is going to be important later on for comparison. But just before we move forward, here's the original screenshot so you can try to focus on the negative space yourself. Not really look at a person, but the space around him. Also very useful if we are analyzing couples or groups. The next clip we're going to watch is some of the details of the plea itself, and this one is a screenshot of that clip. I don't usually spoil the analysis sharing screenshots of clips that we have not seen yet, but this one is important because I want you to focus on some important details before you watch the actual video. In this case, and despite the low quality of the video, you can see the tension of his neck. This goes beyond the negative space that we had seen before, and now we are starting to focus on the details, especially because he is still leaning back on the chair. But let's take a look at that video so you can spot that neck tension.
I have a written plea agreement which indicates, in sum, the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment, burglary, felony.
Yeah, I think that if it wasn't for the people moving around him, it would be really hard to tell that this is a video and he's an actual human being and not a mannequin, because he literally doesn't move a muscle. The only movement that happens, and this is in regards to the majority of the hour-long plea, is Kohberger turning to the screen in front of him that must be showing the details of what he's about to agree to. And even in that movement, you see an almost mechanical, robotic nature. It's not a natural gesture. I always try to make a guess about if someone is a sociopath or a psychopath. And even if the Idaho murders were truly horrific, I would expect a more natural and relaxed demeanor if Kohberger was a psychopath, like totally devoid of tension or remorse. I am not saying that he is remorseful. There's no way to tell that. But in the case of a psychopath, his movements would tend to be more casual and relaxed. But now let's take a look at one of the most chilling moments of this analysis, when he stands up and takes the oath. Let's see what you can spot on this one.
If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now while you're standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in the matter not given before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
First thing that I noticed was his posture. The shoulders are brought forward, the palms of the hands are turned inwards and in a defensive posture. There's tension in there, and you can see the contradiction between the lower part of his body and the upper part. The posture is of someone who doesn't want to be there. But don't be fooled by this. The judge made sure to ask questions to confirm that Kohberger was doing all this willingly. Also, when he stands up, you can spot some hesitation, how he moves his left hand in a bit of a protective gesture. He's about to sit down when the judge tells him to just stay like that to take the oath. You see that he complies in a nervous way, nods when the judge does the request and looks nervous. Now, you might be asking, because I made myself the same question. Could he be acting, doing all these micro movements to look like he's nervous, or he's being coerced, or he's faking being ashamed? Well, there's always that possibility. And these big body movements are rather easy to fake. It would be great if you tell me what do you think about this behavior in the comments. The next thing we saw was the raising of the hand to take the oath itself. You notice that he made sure to turn his torso to the judge. Again, he's showing signals of being polite towards the judge, which I think is one of the reasons why so many people have found this clip so disturbing. He's about to plead guilty to 4 murders, and he's behaving almost like a Boy Scout. A very stiff Boy Scout, but you get the idea. Now, the next clip is going to be the pleading guilty itself. At this time, there are no warnings or hints. Just take a look at it and let's see what you can spot.
And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
I don't know if you could spot a couple things. Again, I apologize for the video quality, but this is the best one I could find. But the thing I found the most disturbing is that it seems that throughout the whole clip, he hasn't blinked, not even once. And that is a long time not blinking. That could be a signal of tension as well, that he's paying close attention to the words of the judge and he doesn't want to miss a single word. But why would that matter? He knows that he's there to plead guilty and he just needs the judge to pause so he can answer yes. He went with the intention to kill those students. But the lack of blinking, together with the almost non-existent movement and just a hint of a nod, well, all that is quite unsettling. But let's keep watching.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
Again, the same lack of movement and absolute no display of emotion whatsoever. If there's any blinking, it was really hard to spot or didn't happen. Now, do you remember that when I told you to read the negative space around Kohberger at the start of the video? Well, this is how you can make an actual comparison of the before and the during the actual plea. And just in case, I'm going to use the cheat code so you can see the difference in posture just by looking at the white blobs. Again, he was way more relaxed at the beginning, but when he was admitted to the murders, his elbows were close to his body in a defensive stance. I think it's also important to mention that throughout the 45 minutes of the full plea hearing, he always looked in the direction of the judge. I just wanted to mention it so you can imagine the amount of tension on his neck. Try to keep your head in the same position for 10 minutes, let alone 45. The only times he looked in the other direction was to look at the prosecution when they were giving their statement. But anyway, let's take a look at that last clip.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
The only thing that I could notice this time that was different is that when the date was mentioned, he lowered his gaze for a split second. That is the single difference with this one. All other behavior and demeanor is exactly the same. Frustrating is an understatement when there are more questions than answers to these murders. But again, 2 families were okay with the guilty plea. 2 families not so much. I guess the first ones wanted to get this over with and the other 2 wanted to take this all the way to the death penalty. In either situation, this was the disturbing case of a guy who murdered 4 innocent students in cold blood and dragged this pre-trial for 2 years until he decided he was too much of a coward for death and instead decided to go for life in prison. I personally think this kind of criminals deserve to die. But I would like to know what you think about this in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Body Language Guy, and don't forget to download my free 100 body language tips in the description of this video. Much love and bliss.